The question of alcohol is typically a moralist point of view about what should be a good wine, you know? And people are afraid about the alcohol. They forget that the photosynthesis produces always sugars, and a tomato, a plum, which is more gorgeous in flavors, has more sugar, and is more digest than a green tomato. And it becomes so violently instinct in the perception that you have people who want wines more green, more acid, because there is less alcohol. It's a question of modernist time where our industry destroy everything on marketing perception and things like that. If you look all the great vintages of the past, of the 19th century, all the greatest, they are more alcohol because the nature was more generous, the fruit had more flavor, and they were more digest, and they were shining, you know, because when the fruit is not tired, you can have a richness, very ripe and light and elegant and dynamic aromatic point of view. C'est comme ça. And we have always to try to not to fall in this trap and to keep our mind solid in our conviction to pursue in the way we like, you know.
So in April every year, the Primeur campaign goes on in Bordeaux, and you, as a journalist or as a wine merchant or as an importer, you go from tasting to tasting all day long. Some are at one chateau where you taste the wines from one estate, typically first growths, super seconds, some of the smaller estates or the top estates in Pomerol or Saint-Emilion. Or you go to larger tastings where you taste all the wines from a region. There could be from Saint-Emilion or from Pomerol or from Pessac-Léognan or one of the other communes or several. You taste barrel samples the spring after the harvest. That means the wine is not finished. And the Primeur system is that you basically buy futures for wine that will arrive in bottles in about 1.5 years' time after the Primeur campaign. The idea is that you buy the wines cheaper and the price will go up in the future, meaning that it's a way to not only get hold of wine, especially from smaller producers with smaller allocations, and you can, you should supposedly get the wines cheaper. I said supposedly, there are some vintages where the wines get cheaper after Primeur.
2025 was marked by 3 months of very dry and warm conditions. So it marked the vintage in the glass, but not as much as we imagine, because when you test the wine, you feel it's very fresh and very floral aromas, and it was very incredible compared to what we know of the cycle. The quality of tannin is very good for us, even for the 3 wines. So we are very happy about the balance, the acidity, the level of pH. I think it's a wine for aging. It's a great wine.
2025 as a vintage is a very special one. I don't think anyone has ever encountered something similar. In general, I think it's a very, very good vintage. I'm not sure if it's a really great vintage because it's not great everywhere, which I think is one of the terms that you need to have to proclaim a great vintage in Bordeaux. Bordeaux is extremely varied with lots of different soils and microclimates.
Perfect rainfall during the Easter. The water was restrictive, but in a good way, because that helped the tannins to get ripe.
Since 25 was quite a warm vintage, I think after tasting 350 to 400 wines, I would say that not too much water stress was key. So basically meaning if you have clay and or limestone in your soils, the wines tends to be better. I've had some beautiful wines on gravel soils as well. Sandy soils seems to really be an issue this year. Of course, then it's lack of water. But it's a very interesting vintage where you find some estates which often are in a little bit of a too cool area to make really great wines have probably made their best wine ever. So there's some absolute gems. On slightly cooler soils in, for example, Fronsac and Saint-Emilion, where you have limestone, has done extremely well. There should be some really nice wines, at least from the top plateau in Pomerol. Absolutely wonderful, one of the best Pétrus I can remember.
Because of the size of the berries, of the ripeness, you have something very powerful, but also it's perfect balance by the freshness of the aromas, by the tension in the flesh of the wine. And I think it's a very unique combination we have in 25, especially at Pétrus. Especially in a vintage so warm and so dry like 25, you don't expect that range of aroma and the deepness of the palate when you taste the wine. So it was a great surprise. I mean, during the harvest, during the vinification, to work such a complex, complex berries, aromas, and composition.
That power and that finesse and that tension and this almost saline note, which is actually getting more and more profound the longer you wait in the aftertaste, which is just giving all these layers. It's a fabulous wine, I have to say. It's wow. That minerality after such a warm year.
Because of the clay, it has given the vines the possibility to perfectly achieve its maturity with no blockage during the season. And I think you can feel that serenity into the wine. Everything is perfectly at its position. The acidity was not destroyed by the condition. The tannin are perfectly ripe, and we have reached the perfect level of complexity in terms of aroma. So, how? Maybe we'll have the answer soon, but maybe we have changed a little bit our work in the vineyard, our understanding of this type of vintage, the way to work them in the cellar, and all those little details put together help us to preserve the capacity of making great wine in vintage like that.
It's not that many years ago where people were discussing, 2018 basically, where people were discussing, is this the end of Merlot? What will happen with Pomerol? And here we have, 8 years later, 7 years later, and we're that bright, really refreshing expression. This tension is incredible.
And with that power, to put together, it's quite rare. Sometimes you have one or the other, but put together, it's quite exceptional.
The wines that made it are absolutely stunning, and I think there will be some absolute favorites in the future from 2025 from my point of view.
The vines are really able to have very deep roots, and when the vines go deep in the soil, they can find some level of soil which is a mix with sand and clay, which are always keeping some wetness, and so you have no stop or shut down of the vines. You have a large beginning, and after the mouth is going on very long time with the acidity and the tannin pushing, with a long finish, and at the end you stay fresh with a part of the tannin, of course, this is very young, but you have a lovely freshness, you have some salinity, some saltiness, but this energy and this brightness at the end is not so often like that. So something very, very nice this year.
Yeah.
By this energy, with this energy. En Primeur is a big party with many friends. No? It's not that? No, to be serious. You have something very smooth at the beginning, and after you have the volume coming, and you think, okay, it's a big wine, warm wine. But in fact, a few seconds after, you have the acidity coming and pushing, and so the wine big and large, and after we are more and more focused in the lens, with the freshness, with the energy, with the tension, and you have several layers of acidity and phenolics pushing the aromas, and you finish with a long finish. The aromatic come back very long time after, and you have this mix with the white bitterness and the saltiness at the end, which is I want more, or I want to eat something. So it's quite marvelous for that.
As a Norwegian, it's sort of often my first sense of spring, especially in 2026, where the spring is really early. It's been like June, so it's absolutely wonderful weather-wise. Not quite sure if it's that good for the wines, but anyway. I normally drive around 3,000 kilometers during a Primeur, so it's fairly a hectic period. Of course, there are some really nice lunches and dinners every now and then as well. So there's a good opportunity to also taste some lovely wines in between and have a little bit of a relaxing moment. Bordeaux as a town, I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I bring a lot of people to Bordeaux on my travels with wine collectors, and everyone is really surprised. Beautiful architecture, and you can walk down the big two-lane street towards Grand Theatre, and you have the iconic wine shop called Intendant, where you have a circle staircase going up, I think, 4 floors or something, where you have wine all around it. It's absolutely gorgeous, and probably the most beautiful wine shop there is. Place de la Bourse is a place to see, the big waterfront place where the trade used to take place in the olden days. Beautiful building, looks like a huge royal palace. And then just behind it you have these beautiful small squares, and you can sit down, have a glass of wine, have some coffee, tea, whatever. Restaurant that you should really go to. It was Robert Parker's favorite, and if you just like your meat grilled on open flames, I think this is the place to go, called La Tupina. Generally, just walking around Bordeaux downtown is wonderful. You have beautiful small wine shops everywhere. Cau de la Roselle is a favorite, owned by Jean-Jacques Dubourdieu from Douai and Clos-Fleury. Has a very lovely selection. It's not a big shop, but the selection is really nice. Badi is a wine shop to mention, of course, legendary wine shop in Bordeaux. I have a favorite wine bar, Tertre Roteboeuf, which is located downtown. Gorgeous wine list and wines from basically everywhere. Well, there's even more, but that's a few of the nice places to stop by if you're interested in wine. When a chateau or a sort of a group of wineries which have gone together, when they organize then a lunch where there's some nice older vintages available. You have some absolute gems inside where you can sit down and relax and feel that you're in sort of a fairy tale of just lovely wine and everything. In general, it's nice and much fresher fruit than expected.
What is very interesting, it's for me the new vision of the Bordeaux contemporain, you understand, for the customer, because you write for the customer. And I think this wine this year, well, is very paradox vintage, because you can drink earlier, but very earlier, so it's accessible already. But in the same time, if you see exactly the DNA of Bordeaux, we have it, because a lot of concentration, a lot of color, a lot of texture, a lot of structure. So it's very, very interesting, because it's a very type Bordeaux wine, but with the freshness, you know, with the cold vintage. And I think it's great. During this year, last year, 25, we need all the time to manage to keep, you know, the water in the soil. And it's my obsession with the team to keep the water in the soil, especially in the gravel soil in Sédécarme, you know, and it's very important. It's why, you know, you have the accumulation of the sugar a little bit less during all the ripeness of the fruit, especially here. You need some seed.
We are very, very happy to see the freshness at this level. It was quite unexpected compared to the warmest of the climate. 25 is a very special and particular vintage, because first it's a classic sunny and warm vintage with a lot of dryness. So we have a lot of concentration in the wine. It's very dark, a lot of tannins. But in the same time, in the two key moments, we have period will help us to keep the freshness and to have a lovely fruit in the wine. So we have a cool weather during at the end of July, during 2-3 weeks, and so we have less than 13.5 degrees in all the red wines. And the second thing is a few rains we have at the beginning of September, which help to finish the ripeness, especially the ripeness of the tannins. Very fine, very ripe.
It was a very dry, very sunny, very hot summer, very extreme in fact, until the end of August. And at the end of August, we got some welcoming rain, 60 millimeters, which really changed the style of the vintage and which brought more freshness. Still, the decision that we took, and I think it was a very strong decision, was to stay calm, not to harvest too early. So we only pick the best plot of Cabernet Sauvignon at the end of September to have a perfect feathery whiteness. So we have wines with a lot of bodies, with a lot of flesh, with a very velvet texture, but together with this beautiful acidity thanks to this wine at the end of August, early September. The only problem for us, I think, would be the volume, because the yields were very small because it was very dry, so very small berries. And so this is the smallest number of bottles of Chateau Margaux since 1856.
So basically 170 years.
Exactly. That's crazy, yeah?
That's incredible. The tannin structure is actually gorgeous.
Exactly.
I have to say that the really quite a lot of tannins, but extremely fine grained.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very precise.
Okay.
Yeah, wonderful. And in good concentration. So.
And Pavillon Blanc is a very strict selection. We only put 45% of the production into Pavillon Blanc. And it was picked very early because for the white, you don't need the maturity of the skin. You just need the aroma to be ripe, and then you need to preserve the acidity. So it was picked mid-August to really preserve this freshness and to give aging potential.
Tu l'as abandonné? Merci.
Non. Allez, ça marche. Bon appétit.
It is 6.
Merci beaucoup.
Avec plaisir. Foie gras, monsieur? C'est bon. Avec c'est très...
The spring was very rainy and there was humidity in the soil. But there were some terrible heat waves that I have never seen in my life. Suddenly, 2 or 3 waves of 2-3 days, the temperature came over 40 degrees. Then the plant suddenly, under such a heatness, stopped working, you know? And it explains that in the heart of a fruit which is dense and ripe, because the summer was really sunny, you have a dynamic, strange, crunchy, a little bit skin of orange flavors and things like that. That makes it looks strange and dynamic in the heart of something opulent, quite like if you were a little bit crunchy and very ripe, you know. I think that will be the character of this vintage, which makes that it doesn't look really profound. It looks really alive and in the heart of a fruit, finally, which is too very ripe and dense. But it doesn't appear. I don't know how it will move through maturation in barrel, what will what it will be next year when we will taste again approaching the bottling time. But anyway, probably you will have always this strange hint of dynamic, rare flavors that come, you can imagine, from these waves of fitness that were very disturbing for the plant. Much more simple with this kind of approach. Such that is really disturbing.
Yeah, it has a very interesting crunch.
Yeah.
Like it's exploding on the palate with fruit, and it's and then you have that salinity, which is wonderful. So you have some energy going on below, which I think it's a wonderful combination of this ripe, fairly rich fruit, but it doesn't really feel that ripe and rich because all the vibrancy going on in the wine.
Exactement. Yeah. Exactement. It is, you could say, there is a word that is not very often said in a tasting. It's ample. It means you have the 60 violins of the orchestra, and they are all gentle. Yeah. And you don't feel the profoundness, but it is there in the expression, you know. Ici, pas celui-là non plus. Zach! Have it. Bon. But you don't mind, I suppose. I've not tasted it since a long time. Hey! Alors, là, I will just wash it a bit. Là. It tells you in such a charming way that time has passed. Et c'est vraiment très très joli. With all the flavors, you know, all that, you know. You know 2000. 2000 was very famous because it is 2000. But the vintage was dense and a little bit strict. You remind that. And when happened 2001, which was so much gentle, professional people said, well, everybody talks about 2000, but 2001 is like that, you know. Now, 26 years old, it remains still a little bit, you could say, austere, you know. It's in the flavors of maturity, in my point of view. Within 5, 6, 7 years around, you know, it's 26 years. Let's pass around 36 years. Within 10 years, it will turn to aging flavors. Then it will be more profound, more voluptuous and things else. But at this moment, it remains, on my point of view, with the character of this vintage, which is very good, dense, a little bit strict. It's not blue, c'est pas tout à fait ça. You agree with me or not?
People don't really open 2000 anymore. So I think that it's a vintage where maybe they don't open it because it was always very expensive, and they sort of keep it. First of all, I really love the nose. I think it's a really gentle nose of some dried fruits, but there's still some fresh. You still have like blueberries and like blackberries, but you also have a really nice, very gentle tobacco note, which is very subtle. It's not overpowering, which it sometimes can do. I think it's a very nice, something like a chocolate thing going on.
Depends on the type of flavors, use, maturity, aging. We like all this expression, but as you said, some people prefer that or that, and when we appreciate, we like the variation.
Yes,
That's
sure.
That's you. there is a fabulous relation between wine and life, between beauty and life. Something very important, look at the color when it's poured. The color mahogany. You see, look, you see this color? Where it pours, you see? If the color is purple, inky, blue, you can be sure the wine will be aggressive, will not be evolved, you know? Vraiment.